What if the argument you had with your spouse this morning and the money sitting in your bank account right now are made of the exact same physical material?
Yeah, I mean, not metaphorically either, right? Literally the exact same material.
Literally. Which, I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you first say it out loud.
Oh, totally. Because we are so trained to view our finances as this, hard mathematical reality.
Hmm.
And then our emotional conflicts are, well, they're something entirely separate, something purely psychological.
Right, something intangible. But the text we are tearing into today argues that they are fundamentally identical. So, welcome to today's custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you.
Yes, and our mission today is to explore this really fascinating 2008 text by a writer named Jue Feng.
The title is The Chapter of Preaching Tao, Article 44, The Three Essential Elements of the Universe. Energy. And look, if you are listening to this right now thinking, okay, this sounds like some highly abstract New Age philosophy, hold on.
Yeah, stick with us.
Because the way this author maps these like grand spiritual concepts onto hard economic realities and just daily human behavior is incredibly grounded.
It really is. The author is proposing what he calls a broad energy theory. He's essentially attempting to bridge traditional, rigid high school physics with deep spiritual philosophy.
Basically claiming that the master keys to the universe, like the wisdom of ancient prophets like Christ and the Buddha and the discoveries of modern science, are all pointing to the exact same mechanism.
Exactly. It's a grand unified theory.
So to understand how this cosmic energy impacts you on your morning commute or, when you're checking your bank balance,
Blue.
we first have to figure out where energy fits into the literal architecture of reality.
Right.
The text sets up this theory by stating that the universe is made of exactly three things, just three: consciousness, structure, and energy.
And the definition of energy provided here is just profoundly expansive. The author states that energy is, well, it's literally everything except consciousness and structure.
It's the raw material.
Yeah, the raw material of reality, the stars in the sky, the stones on the ground, your physical body.
But also your thoughts, right?
Yes, your thoughts, your concepts of love and hate. The text argues they're all just varying densities and frequencies of energy.
And here's the kicker. The total energy of the universe is exactly zero.
Which is mind-bending.
Right. It is perfectly balanced between positive energy, which promotes generation and development, and negative energy, which leads to decay or evolution. It aligns perfectly with the ancient principles of Tai Chi.
The yin and yang of it all.
Yeah, but the detail that really jumped out at me is the assertion that energy itself is entirely neutral. Like, the text explicitly notes that the energy used by gods is no different from the energy used by demons.
It's completely agnostic.
It's just fuel.
Exactly, just fuel. And we all know the classic thermodynamic definitions, right?
Right.
Like potential versus kinetic energy. But what's really fascinating here is applying that exact principle to socioeconomics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because traditional science defines energy as, like, force multiplied by distance, right?
Yeah.
The factor that causes a material system to transition from one state to another.
Right. But the text calls that a narrow energy theory because it only looks at physics. When you expand it to human life, those old high school physics lessons take on a completely new meaning.
So let's ground that for a second. We're used to thinking of potential energy as, a boulder teetering on the edge of a cliff. How does this text translate that into something relatable, like our personal finances?
Well, the author uses money as the ultimate relatable analogy.
Okay.
Money sitting in your savings account in the bank. That is pure potential energy.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it has this immense capacity to do work, to alter your environment, to sustain your life. But while it just sits there, it hasn't exerted its effect yet.
But the moment you withdraw that money...
Right, the moment you use it, whether you're buying groceries, funding a startup, or, the text even mentions bribing an official, it suddenly becomes kinetic energy. It actively exerting a force on the world.
And the text explicitly states that political and social power are also literal, measurable forms of energy.
Yes, power itself is energy.
Which fundamentally changes how you look at society. But that leads to a deeply uncomfortable question.
Let's hear it.
If energy is everything, and the total universe is perfectly balanced at zero, shouldn't energy be perfectly balanced and fair in our own individual lives? Because looking around, I mean, it definitely isn't.
No, it definitely isn't. And the author tackles that head on by challenging one of the most fundamental rules taught in school, the myth of microconservation.
The law of conservation of energy, the idea that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed.
Right, the text actually splits the difference on that,
Yeah.
macroscopically so. For the universe as a whole, or even a whole nation, energy is absolutely conserved.
Okay, so the macro math works out.
Right, but microscopically. At the level of the individual human being, it is completely unbalanced. It is absolutely not conserved. The input simply does not equal the output.
The economic example the author uses here hits so close to home. It says that a country's total issued currency corresponds to its total economic capacity, right? So macro conservation is intact.
Yes, macroscopically it balances.
But individually, people accumulate vastly different amounts of money. Like 8 hours of intense physical labor does not yield the same economic energy for everyone.
Not even close.
The text is almost brutal about it, stating flatly that the poor may stay poor and the rich may stay rich.
Yeah, when you view poverty and wealth purely through this lens of energy mechanics, it strips away the moral judgment entirely. The text explicitly states that energy conservation is for the masses, not for the individual.
Which feels intuitively true but scientifically wild. It's like, imagine a pie where the total calories are perfectly conserved in the universe, right?
Okay, I like this.
But somehow, one person at the table is just eating 90% of the slices. The universe's inventory hasn't changed, but my personal plate is definitely not conserved compared to theirs.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the primary reason this profound imbalance exists comes down to the mechanism of transformation. Specifically, the time it takes to transform different types of energy.
Ah, the time element.
Yeah. Transforming material energy requires immense patience. Like if you want to turn sunlight and fertilizer into biological energy like crops, wheat, or corn, it takes entire seasons of waiting.
Or a month of labor to get your wages.
Exactly. But spiritual energy operates on a nearly instantaneous timeline. A perfectly timed compliment can instantly transform into spiritual energy.
No waiting 30 days.
Right, no waiting at all.
So because energy isn't conserved fairly on an individual level, and because we fundamentally need it to survive, we're forced to go out and acquire it. We literally have to fight for it.
Which naturally brings us to the three specific categories, or flavors, of energy the text identifies, and the diverse battles we fight every single day to hoard them.
Okay, so we have material energy, which acts on matter. This is the wind, sunlight, and crucially, money.
Right, material energy is physical.
Then we have spiritual energy, which acts on the spirit. This is the energy of art, ideologies, thoughts, and praise from your peers.
Yes. And finally, there is soul energy, which acts on the immortal, non-material structure of a person. This is generated from, like, a deep reverence for nature or the divine.
And because people are constantly operating at an individual energy deficit, human society is essentially just a series of ongoing battles to extract these energies from one another.
Exactly. Wars, for instance, are fought over material energy.
But it scales all the way down to our daily lives, too. A quarrel in the office break room or a heated debate on social media. The author views that as a fight for spiritual energy. You are trying to dominate the ideology of the room.
You're trying to extract validation. And religious suppression. That's a fight for soul energy. Even romantic jealousy or corporate backstabbing, they are all just struggles to steal energy to fill a deficit.
And the text makes a really stark distinction here between a human life with a lowercase l and an immortal life in all capital letters.
Right, this is a crucial point.
Your lowercase human life fundamentally requires material energy first. You need money to eat, to have a roof over your head, to survive with basic dignity.
The text definitely doesn't romanticize poverty.
No, it really doesn't. But your immortal uppercase life, your spiritual blueprint, doesn't care about money at all. It runs entirely on soul energy.
Right.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting and a bit uncomfortable. There is a historical example in the text that I really want to push back on.
Okay, the Hitler example.
Yes, the Hitler example. To illustrate these massive energy transfers, the author brings up Hitler. But it describes his rise not in terms of politics or evil, but entirely in terms of physics.
Yeah, mechanical energy transfers.
Right. It claims he simply converted the mental energy of the masses into military energy. That is a very cold, detached way to look at a historical atrocity. The author just views it all as mechanical energy transfer.
It is a jarring perspective, without a doubt. And obviously we aren't taking any sides or endorsing this viewpoint, but to impartially report on what the text is doing, we have to look at the framework.
Right, just looking at the source material.
The author is applying the ruthless objectivity of thermodynamics to human history. Just as a scientist observes a hurricane converting ocean heat into destructive wind velocity without calling the hurricane evil.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, the author is observing crowd psychology as a literal mechanism of energy transfer. The moral judgment is suspended purely to isolate the mechanics.
Okay, looking at it as an observation of mechanics rather than any sort of moral justification makes more sense. And the text claims you can actually see these different energies manifesting externally if you know what to look for.
You really can.
Yeah.
Material energy shows up in physical presence. If a country has strong material energy, its currency dominates the globe. If a person has strong material energy, it dictates their posture.
Right, and spiritual energy manifests as like a calm demeanor during a storm. A person who remains perfectly anchored during a crisis has immense spiritual energy.
You have an internal battery that isn't easily drained by chaos.
And soul energy manifests in what the text calls the human biofield, describing it almost like a colorful aura that can fend off disease and evil spirits.
Wait, biological auric fields fending off evil spirits? How does the author ground that in physics?
Well, the underlying logic the author uses relies on frequency. We know from biology that the human body generates an electromagnetic field, right?
Right, yeah.
The text argues that a dense accumulation of soul energy generates a higher, more stable vibrational frequency. Disease, or evil, operates on a chaotic, lower frequency.
Yeah, so it's interference.
Exactly. The mechanism isn't magic, it's interference. The stable, high-frequency biofield simply repels the lower, chaotic frequencies, kind of acting as an energetic immune system.
That is fascinating. So if everyone around me is constantly battling to steal energy, and my human life needs it to survive, the logical conclusion is that I should just build an impenetrable fortress. I should hoard as much material and spiritual energy as possible.
That is the natural human instinct, but the text explicitly warns against it. Hoarding energy is described as inherently selfish and actively harmful.
It gives some incredibly vivid examples of why this fails, too.
Oh, I love the examples, like eating 10 steamed buns all at once.
Or pumping 350 volts of electricity into a light bulb designed for 220 volts.
But mechanism just cannot handle the load, and you burn out.
Exactly. Instead of hoarding, the text advocates for what it calls the win-win method.
Sharing energy.
Yes. The secret mechanism here is that sharing your energy, especially releasing the energy of love, actually increases your own energy reservoir. Mutual care and respect aren't just moral platitudes. They are the most efficient thermodynamic ways to generate endless energy.
But there is a hard limit to what energy alone can do for you. And this brings us to probably my favorite metaphor in the entire text.
The cabbage limit.
The cabbage limit. The text explains that energy sustains life, but energy alone cannot change its fundamental quality.
So imagine a cabbage.
Right, imagine a cabbage. If you pump that cabbage full of infinite, perfect, energy, abundant sunlight, flawless water, the best fertilizer, it will grow wonderfully.
It becomes a massive, lush, juicy cabbage.
But no matter how much energy it absorbs, it will never ever transform into a tomato.
The parallel to human wealth is so direct. If a human accumulates infinite wealth, limitless material energy, they simply become a very rich human.
A giant cabbage.
Exactly. Their bank account is full, but they don't evolve. They don't become a celestial being or achieve enlightenment just because they hoarded the most fuel.
Which raises a playful but really important question. If absorbing all this energy, whether it's money or praise or whatever, just makes me a giant juicy cabbage,
Right.
what's the point? How do I actually become a tomato? How do we evolve beyond just being efficient energy hoarders?
That is such a great question, and it's the pivot point of the whole philosophy. The ultimate realization of this text is that the quality of your uppercase L life isn't determined by energy at all.
It's determined by consciousness and structure.
Precisely. The engine, not the fuel. A monk with zero bank deposits has a higher quality of life than a secular millionaire, entirely because of their structure.
So to stop being a cabbage and truly evolve, we have to stop focusing on the fuel and start upgrading our blueprint. We have to work on our non-material structure.
If you blindly absorb energy without a refined structure, the text warns you'll turn into a monster or a demon.
Because your structure acts as an automatic filter?
Exactly. If you have the internal structure of a herbivore, you naturally walk outside and absorb the energy of grass. You can't help it. But if you build a celestial structure, you automatically absorb celestial energy, and critically, you shield yourself against negative energy.
And we are bombarded with negative energy constantly. The text defines negative energy as false information, dirty environments, and very specifically, people who constantly complain.
Doom scrolling, essentially.
Exactly. Even excess noise or violent movies are listed as negative energy that degrades your structure. So, what does this all mean? How do we practically apply this idea of structural defense against our daily barrage of negative energy?
What's fascinating here is how the text connects this ancient-sounding advice to modern psychological hygiene. The most effective defense against negative energy isn't to fight it.
Right, because fighting it just drains you.
Exactly. The text says to simply avoid it and change your internal structural focus.
So, what if I'm stuck? Like, I have a complaining coworker I can't avoid, or I'm stuck in traffic.
The author provides a really cool mechanism for this. If you are trapped in a bad environment, your consciousness can actually create a new one.
By using imagery and meditation to absorb what the text calls the essence of the sun and moon and the spirit of heaven and earth.
Which sounds poetic, but there's a mechanic to it. Where your attention goes, energy flows. If you focus on the complaining coworker, you download that chaotic frequency. But the essence of the sun and moon represents steady, ancient forces.
So by focusing on them, you tune your frequency away from the noise.
Exactly. You're locking onto a higher, cleaner signal.
It's like downloading a new software update. The text even recommends repeatedly reading specific works to upgrade your structure. Titles like A Glimpse of the Thousand-Year World, A Glimpse of the 10,000-Year World, and A Glimpse of the Celestial Islands continent of the Elysium world.
By repeatedly exposing your consciousness to these higher-order concepts, you fundamentally shift your blueprint. You stop being the cabbage trying to absorb all the fertilizer, and you become something entirely different.
You step out of the daily struggle for crumbs of material energy. We have covered incredible ground today. We started by tearing up the traditional physics definition of energy, looking at this broad theory where everything is just a neutral currency of the universe.
We looked at the myth of microconservation, realizing that on an individual level, the universe isn't fair. The time it takes to transform energy drives all human conflict.
We explored how our daily battles, quarrels, arguments are just struggles for spiritual and material energy. We hit the cabbage limit.
My favorite part.
Hoarding energy just makes you a giant cabbage. And the only real way to win is the win-win method, sharing love to increase your own reservoir.
And finally, upgrading our non-material structure through conscious focus, so we automatically filter out the negative noise.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. The text argues that every argument, every business deal, and every relationship is an exchange of energy. As you go through your day tomorrow, look at your interactions and ask yourself, are you fighting a pointless battle for someone else's spiritual energy, or are you practicing the win-win method and upgrading your own structure?
That's a great question to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.